you're looking for me.
The story begins in a nameless, rain-soaked city where Detective William Somerset, a veteran homicide detective close to retirement, prepares for his final week on the job. He's methodical, quiet, and deeply analytical, the kind of man to tell you what you had for breakfast when you accidentally rip one out. A new detective, David Mills, transfers into town with his wife, Tracy. He's young, impulsive, passionate, everything Somerset isn't anymore. Mills requested the transfer specifically so he could work in the city, believing he could make a difference, making Somerset question him rigorously for it. Their first case together begins with a brutal murder in a filthy apartment. The victim, an obese man, lies face down in a bowl of spaghetti, surrounded by rotting food. While they investigate, they can't help but notice a few unusual things in place, although they still don't have any conclusive evidence.
Detective Mills, would you go help the officers?
While they head back to the station, Mills tries to glaze his experience in his former branch, but Somerset tells him to put the fries in the bag. Later, they head to the forensic team to check on the body, which had been sent there a while earlier. When they arrive and combine the reports from the forensic expert along with their investigations, they conclude that the man had been murdered. Looking at the obese man's body on a desk, they realize that he's even fatter than Yo Mama's. The man had been held at gunpoint and forced to keep eating until his body burst, leading to his death.
Took his time, too.
When they get back to the station, they report the whole thing to the boss. Somerset, for some weird reason, can't shake off the feeling that the case is way deeper than it seems. He requests that he be assigned to a different mission, as he does not want this to be his last mission before his retirement. He also requests that it wouldn't be proper to make Mill's first mission this difficult. Mill tries to protest, but the chief detective reassigns him to a different mission. Somerset, on the other hand, is still stuck on the case. The next day, another crime scene emerges, and this time, it's at a wealthy lawyer's office. The man had been tortured and unalived, and in the middle of his office is the word greed, written boldly in blood. When the news gets delivered to Somerset, he gets visibly concerned, as he had somehow been acquainted with the lawyer. Frank, Somerset's superior and old friend, tells him now is not a good time to retire, but Somerset has made up his mind. Before leaving, Frank hands him a plastic-containing metal shard pieces the forensic team found in the obese man's stomach. Later that evening, Somerset heads back to the man's apartment, which leads him to discover a hidden compartment behind the deceased man's fridge. There, he finds a short note and the word gluttony boldly written on the wall in grease. Realizing that the two murder cases probably have the same killer, Somerset reports back to Frank. He explains that this is no ordinary case, as the killer is slowly spelling out the 7 deadly sins. He then walks out, announcing his withdrawal from the case.
He wanted it.
Somerset heads to a library where he does some research that gives him better insight into the case. He then makes photocopies of some of the pages and secretly drops them off at Mills's desk to act as a guide for him. The following day at work, Tracy, Mills's wife, puts a call through to him and makes him invite Somerset over for dinner that evening. Since all he does is goon all by himself when he's home, Somerset sees it as a good opportunity, so he gladly accepts the invitation. After work, they both head over to Mills's and meet his fine wife. At first, Tracy gives Somerset mixed signals, acting like she wants him badly, but after a while, he realizes that she's just glad to have someone as close as a friend since they moved. Apparently, despite how nonchalant Mills acts around Somerset, he has been glazing him heavily to Tracy. Over dinner, Tracy suddenly brings up talk about the conversation Somerset despises the most, asking why the geezer is not married at his age. Somerset simply replies that, while he thought he had more time when he was still young, majestic, and tall as hell, age did numbers on him as he slowly developed degenerative riz and lost his ability to pull baddies. For the rest of the dinner, Somerset and Tracy take their time cracking jokes that Mills cannot relate to, making him feel left out. After dinner, the detectives spend the rest of the night brainstorming about the whole case, trying to find gaps, or at least anything that could help. From the short notes the killer leaves at the scenes, they're able to deduce one thing: he's playing God. From the picture taken at the wealthy lawyer's office, they find one where the victim's blood was used to circle the portrait of his wife. The men then decide to confront her to find out what she knows. Arriving at the home of the mourning widow, the detectives question her about the case, but she calls them insensitive. Not relenting, the detectives show her a bunch of pictures from the crime scene, asking if she can detect anything odd. After taking a closer look, she's able to point out that a particular frame has been tampered with. They immediately head to the scene to inspect the frame, but are surprised to see the words, "Help me," written on the wall behind it. Since the fingerprint marks are legible, they immediately call the print lab to analyze the prints. When they arrive and run a couple of scans, they find out that the fingerprints don't belong to the victim, and that the killer must have left them there intentionally to see how far the cops can get. Now, with a wide variety of options, the print lab begins to scan the prints against the entire prints contained in the database. Given the population, the system is said to take a few days to find a match.
You meant what you said in Mrs. School, didn't you?
2 days later, the system finds a match. It's a man with a mental illness record named Victor. Victor is a man who had been involved in drugs, armed robbery, assaults, and has even gone to jail one time for violating someone sexually. While an entire police force gets summoned to set out to apprehend Victor, Somerset and Mills can't shake off the feeling that Victor is not the man they're after. When the forces arrive at his apartment and break in, they meet it covered in air fresheners. Inside, they find a horrifying scene: a skeletal man, barely alive, tied to a bed. His body is covered in sores, his lips cracked, his eyes sunk deep. Photographs show he has been kept there for a full year. The word sloth is written on the wall, making him the third sin. The man happens to be Victor, who had also fallen victim to the killer. The officers immediately rush him to a hospital to see if he can still be saved.
Force ourselves in motion.
While heading to the hospital, a cocky reporter approaches Mills and takes random pictures of him, causing him to flare up and send him away. At the hospital, Mills and Somerset list their hopes of getting answers from Victor, as the doctor tells them even a vegetable is in a better condition than he is. That evening, Somerset receives a call from Tracy, asking to meet up at a restaurant the following morning. Questioning her intentions, he agrees to go to confirm it. At the restaurant the following morning, Tracy shares that she and Mills are pregnant, and that she's scared of raising the baby in the messed up city, not knowing if she should keep it or not. Somerset then uses his experience to advise her that whatever she decides to do with the baby is left to her, but if she does decide to bring it into the world, then she should make sure she spoils the baby at any chance she gets. Later that day at work, the detectives are back where they started, looking for leads. Somerset comes up with an idea and pulls Mills along with him to meet Greasy, an old friend who's a federal agent. Somerset pays Greasy off to help him generate search histories of people related to the 7 deadly sins. Don't worry, twin, your corn stash is safe. When the records arrive,
Is that it? Yeah.
the detectives trace down their first suspect to the home of a man named John Doe. Getting to his apartment, they knock on the door, but no one responds. Suddenly, a tall man in a trench coat appears in the hallway and shoots at them with a pistol. The detectives take cover immediately, so luckily, no one gets hit. A violent chase then follows through the rain-drenched streets and alleys. Mills almost catches him at some point, but the man, who had hidden on top of a truck, ambushes him and hits his head so hard he starts to bleed. He then presses a gun against his head and is about to give him an early ticket to the afterlife, but stops and vanishes. By the time Somerset arrives, the man has vanished. Frustrated and humiliated, Mills heads back into the building and despite Somerset's warnings, breaks into the apartment. There, they find evidence of months, maybe years, of preparation. Journals fill every surface, thousands of notebooks describing Doe's thoughts, confessions, and observations of human sin. They also find a photo room containing mementos and surveillance shots of the earlier victims, as well as a few unidentified people. But what intrigues them the most are the random pictures the strange reporter had taken of Mills on his way to the hospital the previous day, making them realize that Doe has been watching them as well. Shortly after the backup from the police department arrives at the apartment, they try to find signs of fingerprints to help identify the suspect, but somehow can't find any.
Anything about the killings?
A phone suddenly starts ringing, and to their surprise, the caller is Doe, who simply congratulates them for finding his apartment after so long.
Came and collected it last night.
The next day, the detectives set out to locate an unidentified blonde woman whose picture they had found at Doe's place. While they carry out their search, they find out that the woman is a prostitute. Not too long after, they get reports from the other police forces about finding her dead in a brothel. A client was forced to wear a strap-on blade and violate her under threat of death. On the wall, the word lust is boldly written, making it the fourth sin. The man involved is traumatized, screaming uncontrollably as he describes what he was made to do. Somerset and Mills are both shaken as they wonder if the person they're dealing with is actually human or something worse, as the depravity seems endless. That night when Mills returns home to his loving wife, the reality of being single hits Somerset hard as he walks around his apartment with no one to calm him down. The following day, they get called to another crime scene. This time, a young woman lies dead, with her face mutilated. A set of sleeping pills has been glued to one hand, with a cell phone to the other. At the top of the bed is a frame, showing her majestic-looking face before the attack. The killer had cut off her nose and given her a choice to either call for help and live disfigured, or take the pills and die. Given the options she had resorted to, the word pride is written on the wall in blood. By now, only two sins are left, envy and wrath. Somerset predicts the killer will stop after these two because he'll have completed his mission. But before they can plan their next move, something shocking happens. At the police station, a chopped man calmly walks in and surrenders, introducing himself as John Doe. His clothes are stained red, his fingertips covered in blood.
All the way! All the way!
After the police cuff him up, they realize the cause of Doe's bloodied fingertips, as well as the reason they couldn't retrieve any fingerprints from his apartment. Apparently, Doe cuts the skin off the tips of his fingers from time to time, to prevent them from leaving prints behind. In the interrogation room, he's calm, polite, almost serene, refusing to speak to anyone but the two detectives he claims to admire. Doe gets his lawyer to convince them that if they want to find the remaining two bodies, they'll have to follow him. Doe will take them to the location of the final two murders, but only if Somerset and Mills go with him personally. If they refuse, he'll plead insanity, and the bodies will never be found. Against all sense, the detectives agree, wondering what kind of twisted scheme the psychopath is cooking up. The next morning, they set out towards the location, as discussed. Some agents scout the area for any sort of ambush, while tailing them closely on a chopper. The detectives drive into the desert with Doe in the back seat, handcuffed. Somerset tries to reason with him, asking why he did all this, and Doe answers in his soft, unsettling voice that people sin every day and ignore it, but he was chosen to show them the truth and change things for good. He insists he's not crazy, and that his crimes are simply long-deserved examples of divine punishment. Mills argues with him, disgusted by his arrogance and logic. Doe, however, seems fixated on Mills personally, hinting that his final work will be his masterpiece. After hours of driving, they stop at an empty dirt road, surrounded by nothing but desert and power lines. Doe leads them a few feet away from the car and tells them the package is on its way. Suddenly, a delivery van approaches from a distance. Somerset, alarmed, stops the van and confronts the driver. The man says he was paid to deliver a package to this location at that exact time to Detective David Mills. Somerset collects the box cautiously and sends the delivery man away. When he opens it, his face goes completely pale. Inside lies something genuinely horrific. He yells at Mills to put his gun down immediately, but it only makes him more curious about what is going on. Doe then begins speaking softly, describing how earlier that morning, he stopped by Mills's home. He says he tried to crack his wife, but given that she rejected him, he took a souvenir for himself, her pretty head. Mills stands in disbelief, waiting for Somerset to tell him that Doe is tripping and simply trying to rage bait him, but Somerset stays mute. He pleads with Mills to stay calm, to think, but Mills is already breaking down. Doe continues, explaining that he was envious of Mills's normal life, his wife, his simplicity, and by unaliving Tracy, he has committed envy. Now, he says, Mills has to fulfill the final sin, wrath. Mills raises his gun, trembling, with tears in his eyes. Somerset begs him not to pull the trigger because he'd just be playing into Doe's hand. But Doe keeps talking, calmly describing Tracy's terror, saying she begged for her life and for her unborn child's. Judging by the shock in Mills's eyes, he realizes that he didn't even know about the baby, so he thrives on that topic. Somerset keeps telling Mills that if he lets his wrath get over him, then Doe wins, but Mills is too far gone. He pulls the trigger, emptying the whole revolver on Doe, and unaliving him instantly. He has become the last of the 7 deadly sins, wrath. In the aftermath, Mills gets arrested for murder and taken into custody. The end. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.